The Sporting Dog Adventures podcast is proudly brought to you by Saki Acres Retrievers. Whether you're looking for a black, yellow, or chocolate Labrador Retriever puppy, please check out our website for more information at www.sagiacres.com. You can also email Jeff at sportingdogtv@gmail.com or call 262-215-9683. And remember, everyone deserves a Sagi dog. Hey, welcome to the Hunting Guy Podcast. We're here today, and I want to talk to you about using a decoy on your big game hunts. Now, this is something I had never done. I had a good friend tell me that it worked really well, and I always pictured using a decoy as having a buck decoy. So that was the first one I bought. I used a buck decoy. I had deer that were curious and would come look at it, but the problem I had was that the few times I had bucks come in, my decoy, I guess, must have looked too mean and fierce, and they would leave because they didn't want to challenge him to a fight. I then got myself a doe decoy, and I will say with a straight face, this is some of the most fun I have ever had hunting is with a decoy. It is putting that decoy out, having it set up, and bringing those deer in because you know they're looking, especially when the rut is on, or they're looking if it's toward the end of the day or early in the morning, they want to come out and feed. You can use it as basically an attractant or a confidence decoy, but it works really well. Now, how it works well. I like to use it on an open area where I've got a food plot or a field, and you can have the deer where they can see it from long distance. I've tried it on trails, and it's like having a traffic jam. For whatever reason, the deer see it. Even if it's slightly off the trail, it freaks them out. They don't want to come by. So I don't use it on trails in tight areas like pinch points, different things like that, choke points where you're going to have the deer come in, funnels. I use it where there's more room where the inquisitive deer can come out. You should always try to keep it as scent free as possible. But for whatever reason, I think they're willing to tolerate some human scent on this decoy because obviously the decoy is there, as well as the fact that you should have scent on it. And we'll talk about that in the next part of the show. I'll give you four examples this year of using this decoy. And I have a doe decoy. It's just where the doe's head is up. She's not feeding. I put it out so that it'll bring the deer in on a quartering away from me shot. So I'll angle the deer. If I'm here, I'll angle it this way, so that when the buck comes in, I've got a nice quartering away or dead on shot. You don't want to have it where the buck is going to come in behind the decoy on an angle toward you so that you've got a bad shot. You want to put it at a good spot so you're at a good angle because they're going to come around to the backside because they want to scent it and they want to smell. I had it the first year that I hunted at my new property that I just moved to. I stuck it out. It was a morning hunt. I was sitting there and first light was coming up and I could see a buck come for, it was at least a quarter mile just on a dead run. Couldn't see horns on it. It was kind of at that point in the morning, which maybe it's because I'm old and I'm dating myself, but where you can see everything, you can shoot, but you don't, my eyes just don't quite pick up enough light, where if it had a big rack, I would have seen it. But I knew with the way the deer was running at it, it had to be a buck. I could tell it wasn't big because I could not see horns while it was coming in. It gets in there. It was a small 6-point. And he just sat there. He fell in love. He sat there with her for about, I'd say 5 minutes, kind of moved off and then came back for another 5 minutes. He would smell the decoy. He got somewhat uncomfortable because the decoy obviously didn't move. But overall, he sat there. Could have taken the deer for probably at least 5 of those minutes with a good shot. And it worked really well. Now, the second time that I had success with this decoy this last season, and again, I could go into other seasons, but we're just going to talk about last season. The second time we had success, hold on one second. Sorry about that. My son and I went out, and this was after I had already harvested a deer, so I didn't have a tag. And I said, you know what? I've got a doe tag. I'll bring my crossbow along. If we see a doe, maybe I'll shoot a doe, but I'll go out. I'll hunt with you. So we're hunting out of a 12-foot tower blind built for 2 people, all set. We didn't go out right away in the morning. Total mistake by me. Rookie mistake. but it was raining. And I told him, I'm like, it's supposed to rain pretty hard. We got up at 4. I'm like, why don't we go back to sleep, get up at 7? I'd rather be out there where we can go into this blind. We haven't sat it yet. We can get into the blind. We can hunt out of it, but be out there in the light to get everything set up. It's going to be raining. The deer aren't going to care anyway. They're going to probably start moving about the time it ends. So we'll try to make sure that we're out there so that when that rain stops, the deer are going to come. So I knew we were in a bad spot right away. We start going out to the blind. We get out there, and there was a small buck that was in the food plot. That was mistake number one. Deer runs away, and I'm like, man, let's hurry up and get our stuff. Obviously, that deer's out here. We got to hurry. We put our gear down by the stand, and then we start over with the decoy. That was mistake number two. As we're setting up, my son says, "Oh my gosh, Dad, there's a deer coming toward us." Again, we're squatting down, setting up this decoy. Our heads are about probably a little bit higher than the back of the decoy. And we have a nice buck that's a shooter buck walking right to us. Curious, like, hey, what are you guys doing? We didn't have a bow on us, so neither of us could shoot. Didn't know what to do. Kind of sat there. And then I'm like, I don't know if this was mistake number 3 or not, but I'm like, let's try to get back over, keep low. Maybe the deer will focus on the decoy. Ultimately, as we're moving back to the stand, which was only 25 yards away, the deer moves off. Didn't run, but moved off. Figured get in the stand, maybe he'll come back. He never did. So that was our 2 or 3 mistakes we made in that sequence. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of probably about an hour later. We're now in the stand, and it was cool. We had does come in, and they're checking this decoy out. Now, I will tell you that with the decoys, I've had about 50% of the does will feed next to it. I've had them lick the lips on the decoy. I've had them not be spooked, and another 50, the other half, they just don't like it. So it's something that it's not necessarily going to attract does, but at the same time, half of them didn't flare. That's a duck term. didn't break and leave. But these does, they didn't understand what this decoy was. They were a little freaked out by it, but they weren't going to leave. So let's say the decoy's here. They circled around here because the wind was over here. They circled around, and they're sitting there, and our stand is like at a point they're like 5 yards from us. They're right at the bottom of the stand, and I'm like, my gosh, they're going to get around to the back side of us. Which, here they are. The wind is blowing this way. All they had to do is circle back further, and they're going to be right in our wind. And there's 2 guys sitting in a stance. They're going to smell us. So we're sitting there, and it's like, this is a disaster. They're going to get behind us. And an 8-point buck came running right in, right to our decoy. He actually went up. He smelled the decoy's butt twice, jumped back like, holy cow, she's got a lot of scent on her. Came back, was hanging out by her. I think he would have stayed longer, but his presence made the does want to leave. So the does hauled ass and got out of there, and he went back and chased them. That was just this last year. That was the 3 times that I had it where it worked. Actually, that's 3 times. The 4th time was the deer I harvested this year, which was a 9-point that scored about 140 inches. My biggest whitetail to date. And with this deer, he was coming through a river bottom. I had him in a field. I saw him on the river bottom. For whatever reason, he was probably within about 10 to 15 yards of my decoy, but he was so focused on where he was going, he never saw her. I used a doe call. I tried a grunt call. He kept going. Luckily, I had put a scent trail of doe and heat through this river bottom as I walked through from one side to the other, and then dragged it all the way up to my decoy. I thought I lost him. Actually sent my son Clayton a text message. It said, just had a nice buck go through. He didn't see me. I hope maybe he comes back. I had my crossbow. I put it down. I'm like relaxed. I'm like, well, hopefully he'll come back. And all of a sudden I look for my right, and he's following the scent trail and came right in. The nice part about it, when you do have something like this happen, by the time I got to where I was grabbing for my bow, he was fairly close, but he was so focused on the decoy. I'm watching him. I reached over, grabbed it, got it up, and I was able to make a great, clean, ethical shot. He went like 40 yards. It worked like a charm. That deer, He could have, I had him on camera at that stand multiple times. He could have come in there and walked through there later. But in the end, the trail that he first used was probably about 45 yards. So I probably wouldn't have shot at him. He could have came through the open field, but with that decoy out there, that's what drew him out there. So it worked like a charm. It worked really well. And it is something that I will use when I go out in the field, especially during the rut. I have to take off my blinders in the whole situation and actually put that buck decoy out because I think that would be fun too. To have a buck decoy out and watch another buck come in and just ram it, that would be something that would be very cool. I was just so fixated on knowing I had this one nice deer there, like, no, I got to get that deer, that I wanted to use something that had worked for me. But I've talked to guys that say that buck decoys work even better. So I do have that. I am going to use that next season and see how that works. So that's it for this part of the show. Next up, I want to talk about preparing your decoy for getting them out in the field, and then scent that you can use and ways you can deploy it. All that and more coming up after this. If you love the shooting sports like I do, you need to check out our friends at Mech Outdoors. They have fantastic products, whether you're looking at shot shell or metallic reloading, or you want to get yourself a clay thrower so you can practice up for the season. For more information, check out their website at mechoutdoors.com. Welcome back to the show. So now we talked about the use of a decoy and why it works and how to set it up, but we'll give you a little bit more backstory on what I do with my decoys before I take them out. I'm not going to say that I wear rubber gloves when I take my decoy out. When I carry them out, I actually carry it with the legs up, because you can reach into the cavity so that my scent is on the inside of the decoy. Yes, I realize you're going to have some human scent on there, but it's in an area that is not as readily accessible to the deer. So I get that in a perfect world, you'd have rubber gloves on. It's just not applicable for how I hunt and the distances I have to walk. Now, with that said, I do take my decoys, I do wash them down with basically a scent free shower soap like we would use. So we call my decoy Babe. I give Babe a bath. I scrub her down, wipe her down with a washcloth with the soap, and then I spray her off and I let her dry for at least a day. And I have it where it is scent free. I carry the decoy out. I set the decoy up. I usually will take either stakes that I can hook into the feet, or I take a longer post stake and put it up through that opening so that I can make sure that if there's any wind, the decoy doesn't blow over. And then once I have them out there, I use Conquest Evercalm deodorant stick or drops, and I put that on the doe, as well as I will use a little bit of their Conquest VS1. I liked this last year. I've never had it work before, but I took a wick, put some of the VS1 dough and heat stuff on the wick, and I just tied a rope with that wick to my belt and did a scent drag. And that is what brought my deer in this year for me. Use the scent drag. I walked across where I knew the trail was. So you're basically crossing and having trails intersect with your scent drag, and then brought it up the fence line, which would seem to be what I thought was a natural approach for a deer. It worked this year. The deer came right in. He never got to close enough to where he was like right up to the decoy, but he definitely had winded it and gotten around it because he was checking it out. It is something that I've had probably where there was more human scent than I would like on my doe decoy, and it still worked when it had that ever calm scent on there, because that is what basically put them in a position where they're like, I see a deer, I smell deer scent. The human scent must be something I can disregard. Now, this is going to vary wherever you hunt. If you are in areas that I used to hunt in national forest, where I would be the only person that would probably sit in a stand in that area the whole year. If you're going to hunt in that kind of area where there's never human scent, you'd want to really make sure that you double down on everything and didn't have any scent on your decoy. I will probably get wipes. I was sitting in my stand this year and I'm like, I should really have some scent free type wipes and wipe it down so that I have it once I get it out there, so I can make sure that even the minute amount of scent that I have on it, it's not there. But you're going to want to have it set up so that it is in a natural position where a deer would be, so that you have deer scent on it, and so that you have it set up so that when the deer comes in, like we had talked about in the past segment, that the deer is set up for a good ethical shot. So I hope that helps. Next up, I want to talk about the need to practice with your archery equipment during the season. All that and more coming up after this.
Welcome to Boucher in Janesville, where customer service is our #1 priority.
Our customers come back to us because of the experience that we provide for them.
We're here to make sure that we find you the right car, one that fits your budget, and do so in a timely manner.
When we say we ride with you every mile, it means we care about you and how you are treated.
Estamos con personal que habla español en los departamentos de servicio y venta.
Our certified technicians are here to help you with all your service needs.
Visit us today at Boucher.com.
At Boucher, we ride with you every mile.
Hey, welcome back to the show. So we're in the last part of the show now, and this is always what I consider our hunting tip. And it is something that it's a tip that I try to push on my kids every year, and that is that you have to practice during the season. One, you want to make sure that you're confident in your shot. But two, when we're climbing up and down out of trees or sitting in blinds or walking in, you're banging the sights on your weapon. You want to make sure that you are set where it's perfect, where you're dead on, so that you can make that good, clean, ethical shot. You're always going to have that shot where it's at the end of your comfort zone, where you're like, you know what? It's at 40 yards. I can make that shot. I make it routinely when I'm shooting at a target, but you want to make sure that you are dialed in just like when you're shooting at that target. You have to make sure that you're practicing. I usually will shoot at a target about every 10 days during season, just to make sure, and it won't be many shots, 1 or 2, just to make sure at 20 yards, I know it's dead on. I know that I'm set. This last year, I went out and for whatever reason, the sight on my crossbow, it wouldn't adjust anymore. I started to adjust it. It was blown up. Something went wrong with it. I don't know what it was. I got a different one, put it on, was all dialed in. But if I hadn't taken that and shot it, I was shooting about 2 inches to the left at 20 yards. Now, if you put that out to 40 yards, you're probably looking at either hitting an animal too far in the front or too far back and losing the animal. You want to make sure that you are just putting in that little bit of practice after you've got it sighted in, so that you understand that it is in a good spot. When you go to take your shot, you're confident, and you're going to be that much more productive. Because honestly, shooting, I've been in the military, I was a police supervisor. Shooting is confidence. I will make sure my gun is sighted in and then not worry about shooting it at greater distances, because I've shot a lot in my life. I am confident in my ability to hit something, whether it's at 100 yards or 400 yards, because I've shot enough. And that's with a gun, obviously. And with my crossbow, I'm confident up to 50 yards because I have shot a lot. With that said, there's nothing that will make you confident like knowing that your weapon that you're using is dead on. You want to make sure they're dead on, so that when you pull that trigger, you're confident and you know that animal is going to receive an ethical shot that's going to let you recover them. So that would be our last tip for today, of our hunting tip. Stay tuned next week. We're going to have some great adventures coming up. We're going to, again, try to get on track here, start doing this multiple weeks, figured out the editing. We had a program we were trying to use. I was trying to use a certain camera and then put the video clip in. It just wasn't working. We got it figured out now. So now that we get everything dialed in, we're going to get this show on the road, have it up every week, and I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have anything you would like to hear on the Hunting Guy podcast, email me at sportingdogtv@gmail.com. Again, sportingdogtv@gmail.com. I would love to hear your input and questions on what you would like to hear. We'll have more next week on the Hunting Guy podcast. Please stay tuned, and thank you so much for listening. God bless.